If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, we are back and I want to welcome our guest here today. And we're going to speak about something very special. I call it Savate Day, but in fact it's Savate weekend. Now in the other episode, the one before, and I'll put the links in for you here, these gentlemen, all of them were actually at the Battle of Savate, and they told us what happened there. And as I understand it, 3-2 Battalion attacked a military base. It attacked an armed base of about 1,200 people, might even be more armed soldiers there. They had like 2 light tanks with them. They had a lot of firepower. And there were no more than about 250 of the 3-2 Battalion men. They were waiting for UNITA to come and assist them, but UNITA said they never arrived for whatever reasons. Nevertheless, they went on, they attacked, and they defeated the enemy. It is fantastic. It is probably one of the greatest military feats in the history of military warfare and history. But because it's so important to the battalion, they have a special day or a special weekend for it, which runs under the auspices of the 3-2 Battalion Veterans Association. And we're going to speak about that as well. So let me introduce my guest to you first. And I'll do it in no specific order. The first one I'll go to is Rick Lob. Rick, can you tell us just slightly, just shortly, where you come from? How did you end up in the battalion?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I finished junior leaders course at infantry school in Oudtshoorn, 79. And in October 79, we flew up to 3-2 Battalion to do selection to join the unit. After various small courses and the selection, we did a minor tactics, survival, weapons, conversational Portuguese courses. And in December 79, we were deployed as a strictly white leader group company into the bush, where we operated for the whole of December just to get us used to how the unit works. And then we came back and we were allocated to our various platoons and recce group, wherever. And that's how I ended up at 3-2 Battalion, and I was there till 82. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Rick. We appreciate that. Justin, our offer you on the show. Can you tell us?
Yeah, hi, Chris. Yeah, I grew up in a farmer's Zululand. On completing school, I was drafted into the military, as we all were in those days, or certainly the white guys. And I was sent to the Signal Corps, which is the Army Gymnasium in Heidelberg, where I spent that first year doing my basic training, leadership course, and officers course. End of which I volunteered for the border up in Namibia, Angola border. And once up there, volunteered again for 3-2 Battalion. Yeah, thrown into the deep end with that, went straight into operational role, very short on experience. With the comms failure in that first ops, I was very nearly thrown out of the battalion by the officer commanding Dion Ferreira. Managed to scribble my way around that one, and then yeah, with the experience of Savate in the middle of that year through to the end of the year, where Colonel Ferreira wanted me to stay, having wanted to throw me out at the beginning, which is quite nice. But yeah, I then left the battalion and went back to resume my studies at university, and did my citizen force camps, as they call it, with 2 Reconnaissance Regiment. Yeah, that came to an end of 90s. So.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. We also know you wrote a book. I'm going to flash the book here on the screen, and I expect all of you to support that book. Grobbies, Leon Grobler, can you tell us, please, How did you end up there at Savate and at 3-2 Battalion?
Well, my story is the same as Rick, so I'm not going to repeat that. There's one thing that I want to add, and maybe this is also why Rick decided to put up his hand for 3-2. We were offered different units to be placed, and we had to make a choice. And then I saw Colonel Ferreira, Falcon, and the RSM Pep van Zyl with their camo berets, and we asked, who are these guys? So we start hearing things, but not a lot. And we were curious. So we had a short interview, all of us. And then from that, they decided, okay, we send these guys up the later part of October. And I was placed at Alpha Company when I started, when I went on my deployments. And Alpha 1, luckily, Alpha Company, I had a perception Falcon had a very soft spot for Alpha. Always got the sweet spots when it comes to good ops. And we went there and we attacked the base. And so after my year serviceman, I was a corporal then. And then I went to university, and my first, the first holiday, university holiday, our commander at Pik military unit, Van der Walt, he was actually the guy in charge of the Dankie Tannies, Suiderkruisfonds. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, no, I want to do a DEMS course. You get some more money and you blow things up. He said, why don't you go and do company sergeant major? I said, yes, but I'm not a sergeant yet. He said, well, I will make you one. You need to go and do that course at infantry school. And then, being a student, when you go to the border, do camps, financially it's a good thing. You make a lot of money and you pay your studies and that. And then every university we went there. So I actually ended up doing 7 camps in total with 3-2 Battalion. My last 2 camps, I was the company sergeant major of Golf Company. And I went on deployment with Golf in mid-88. And while we were deployed at the western side, Kalawek, it was actually then the peace was signed and it was the end of the war. And 3 weeks after, Buta promised everybody that there's no South Africans left. 3 weeks thereafter, we left Angola. And the next deployment was at Pomfret. So, that's me. And I can't really imagine someone did more camps than me in 3-2.
Thank you for that. We will get to a Pomfret story. I am going to interview General Micho Delport. I hope I say his name correct. And I believe he was the commander during the Pomfret days as well. He'll be able to tell us the sad story what happened there. And there are other senior generals who will talk to us about that as well. I'm thinking of General Kritzinger, who said he'll talk to us. But now, because of Savate being such a big day in the battalion, I have to ask you, how did this come about? How did you people decide as military veterans you're going to honor Savate Day and keep the traditions alive? Because I just need to say to the people here, 3-2 Battalion does not exist anymore. It came to an end because of political interference. I don't want to express too much of an opinion. The officers I've mentioned, and quite a few others can tell us more about it than what I can. But it came to an end, and yet it is still alive. And it will be alive until the last one is not with us anymore. And I hope that is in many decades from now. So can you tell me, was there a feeling amongst you all that you need to honor this battle, even if nobody else would want to do it? And anyone can tell me, whoever wants to talk is fine.
If it all started in 82, the guys staying in Pretoria, normally, more likely the guys who studied back then, students, said, but we need to arrange get-togethers. I studied at Poch. And then they said, let's get together, drink a few beers, and then we start doing things in a more formal fashion. And our first weekend out was at Alphabet, which was actually outside the general meeting, was a very informal session. But and then we called it back then 3-2 Battalion Bond. And at some stage, people got married, and the bond actually went dead. And then General Gernel, the second commander, he said, okay, I think it's time that we now need to create the 3-2 Battalion VA, Veterans Association. And I just want to say, in the Bosch War units, that the 3-2 Battalion Bond was the first veterans organization in South Africa. So 3-2 Battalion VA, General Nel was selected as president, and Colonel Van der Walt, the chairman. And they said, no, we need to do it more formally. Look, in the Bond era, we had our Savate weekends. Not really weekends, but a day or two. And but in the VA now, we said, okay, we're going to put it out, and it will always be around 21st of May every year, the weekend the closest to that date. And okay, currently I'm the secretary of the 3-2 VA, and I've been secretary before and regional rep, same as Rick, and I was also chairman for 4 years. So the structure around the weekend is with the wives in a smart dress, medals and all that. We have we sit down and we wine and dine, and normally there's someone who give a speech around Savate or Forte or whatever big ops. And the Saturday morning we have our AGM. It's structured for most of the morning, and there's always a lot of agenda. And it's the first time that we see one another in the year, the most of us. And then some people sometimes flow over to join us from overseas, Germany, Belgium, and so on. And then after the AGM, we have our social, and then later the afternoon, normally we have an auction. And the purpose of the auction is to generate funds for the VA. We have a lot of projects what we run, and we sit with not a lot of funds, but we sit with the demand outstripped supply of money. So we want to go and erect a monument formally with Angolans at Savate, and we want to do something at Buffalo at the cemetery. There's a few projects in line, so we need money. So the auction is the purpose of which is to do exactly that. And this Sunday, it's our formal parade at the Voortrekker Monument. Now, the Tree of Honor, you've seen the pictures. Now, the Tree of Honor first was a tree picked from a hardwood tree, and then they said, okay, rig it in to reflect the killed in action. And that tree moved to Pomfret, and with the closure of 3-2, it moved over to Zeerust. And then one of our first projects was, while I was secretary back then, was we need to relocate the tree to the Voortrekker Monument. And Gert, as he preferred to be known, General Nel, he said, no, he spoke to General Gert Opperman of the Voortrekker Monument. And he said, we can put our tree of honor there. They will give us a piece of land. And so a friend of mine, we moved the tree of honor. And then a general, also an old member of 3-2, Mannetjies de Goede, who ended up also as a general, he signed on behalf of the army, he signed it off to the property of 3-2 VA. So when we moved the Tree of Honor to Voortrekker Monument, we again put a contract in place. It's our property. So we have now a PTY Limited, 3-2 Battalion, and that will be our the owner of the property and trademarks and all that. So the parade is at the Tree of Honor. So we start off with the service. And after the service, then there's the parade and laying of wreaths and with the banners and all that. But it's also very emotional when we read the names of the fallen. Then it brings back memories. Well, that is the purpose of the Tree of Honor. And we need to keep the memory alive of 3-2 Battalion and celebrate the rich history we have and the people who paid the highest price.
Well, it was actually, I would say, the best fighting unit in the South African Army ever. And I want to tell to the foreigners here listening, and a foreigner to me is anybody who's not a South African. We don't mean it badly, it's just the way we speak. In Afrikaans, uitlanders. This is not America. This is not where you have a huge veteran organization who's going to take care of the former soldiers. There's no such thing in practice. They might have a few things going here and there, but in actual fact, it's nonsense. It doesn't help the former soldiers. It does not help the veterans. But therefore, the veterans decided they will help themselves. And that's what they're doing right here. With a Savate Day, with a tree stomp, and we're going to make a separate episode on the tree stomp as well, because just last week, I believe everybody got together to work on the tree stomp and to make sure that it's still the way it should be. So, Rick, I think you and perhaps Justin, have you ever attended one of these meetings? These get-togethers, and if you did so, please tell us about it. Tell us what happens there. How do you dress? Do you get your formal jacket on, which you people have, with your beret and your medals? How does this work?
Yeah, of course. Grobby's talked about the VA starting in Grobby's, I think it was the early 2000s.
I believe it was 2004.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around there. But before that, well, it is in that same time period of 2004, 2005, the Cape region, I'm talking about Cape Town, used to get the old guys together, and we used to go up to Langebaan and have our Savate weekend as guests of Voortrekker at Langebaan. And I think I went to 3 or 4 of the Cape Savate weekends, and it was always very well attended. It was very formal in a way that on the Saturday we would get dressed in our blazers with our ties on and our berets, and we'd have a prayer. And I think that the one year middlemost padre was the padre there, and that was who used to come and frequent from the Transvaal those Savate days was Colonel van der Walt, Stef van der Walt. Anyway, that changed I think in about 2008 or 2009. The VA decided that they're going to have the Savate weekend in Gauteng. And so from then on, we all went up to Gauteng to have the Savate weekend, which was very formal. Friday night, it was a proper meal, sit-down meal with wives and stuff, and berets and everything on, medals. Saturday was the AGM, normally at the Voortrekker Monument. And then there was a big skouerskeer after that with a spit braai of some sorts. But anyway, lots of beers were also enjoyed and lots of talking. And then on the Sunday, as Grobby says, we all got together at the monument where we honored the fallen at Savate and fallen right through the history of the unit. And we lay wreaths. And after that, we went normally to a restaurant called, what was it called again? Crawdaddy's in Centurion. And we had a nice time there. And then we all scattered home again. That was normally how it worked, of course.
Okay, so it would be like a get-together of all the veterans with their wives, girlfriends. Who else can attend this?
In the middle 2000s, 2012, 13, 14, thereabouts, we got very friendly with the Air Force because they were a very big part of our successes. And we used to invite the Air Force guys to join us. And they did. Johan Mertz came, Neil Wallace came, Floppy Lutz came. There are lots of them that joined us. And it was always good to have them, to these occasions because it was nice to have them there. They were part of us, sort of.
Yeah, Johan Mertz is a guy who won the honoris crux at Savate. He was the gunship pilot.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, Johan Mertz. Yeah.
Justin, do you have any comments here on how this get together, this special day, how it goes?
Yeah, I must say, Savate Day for me, the way I've understood it is similar along the lines. I think Leon mentioned it in the other interviews, that along the lines of the French Foreign Legion, celebrate Dien Bien Phu, I think it is that they pronounce it. And that's where Savate Day came about 84, correction. And yeah, Savate Day for me is very much a process, or it was a get-together to commemorate those who didn't make it, not only at Savate, but in all the other ops, and that the commemorative tree lists everybody who was killed in action in the history of 3-2. And yeah, it's a very special day, especially the service on the Sunday, very emotional. And yeah, it's very interesting, that whole process, sort of going there and not to pay your respects, but also confront your own emotional issues. Yeah, the therapeutic process that you go through that I find with it, and talking to other guys who were there at Savate or at 3-2 and went through other combat. And what's also been very interesting with Savate Day was meeting the relatives of some of the guys who didn't make it. Tim Patrick, who was killed at Savate, his brother Rich Patrick, for years had no idea what had actually happened to Tim because we couldn't tell him. I was actually at school with Rich Patrick. I could never share exactly what had happened with him because of clandestine and top secret and all that stuff. So he was really badly affected by all of this, and changed the course of his life, and our battle to deal with it. And we managed to get him through to one of the Savate reunions. And when I'm done, I'd like if Rick could explain what happened when Rich Patrick arrived. So, and for me, I've also what was quite hard was meeting Captain Erasmus. I met his wife and two beautiful young daughters who are in their 20s. Yeah, very hard talking to them. and the two young girls I could just see had question marks written all over their eyes. So they didn't ask many questions, which is good because I'm not sure I would have been able to say much without getting emotional about it. But so yeah, it's a very interesting day and a very important day for all of us to pay our respects and to help us deal with the issues that we are left with.
Yes, and if I can also add someone else. I was secretary and I received an email from a guy. He was back then in the British Army. And he ended up with a VC and all that. And his name is Louis. So Louis said, we start talking. And I remember Bottis was then in Namibia researching his book. And I said, listen, go and talk to Engel's family. Introduce them to their son. It was a huge shock to the family. And they said, well, you know, very hesitant. They were very scared about Engel's mum. Will she be able, you know, to cater? But anyway, cut a long story short, one of the VA projects was to fly Louis here. And we met him and had a great week. So after that, after the weekend, they took him to Namibia, to his family. His mum passed away many years ago. And just before she passed away, I think it was cancer, she said, listen, you had a dad. So yeah, we met Engel's son.
Yeah, Grobies, that was I remember meeting him there at that Savate reunion, at that Savate weekend, and I had a long talk to him, and he was a very respectful guy, a very good soldier in one of the units of the British Army. But going back to Justin's story, of course, I got this call from Justin on a Friday, I think, or Saturday morning, and he said to me, Rick, are you going to the monument? And I said, yep, Just, I'm going. He said, please look out for a guy called Richard Patrick. It's Tim Patrick's brother. Yes, when Justin told me that, I got cold. And during the service, I kept looking around to see if I could see this guy. Anyway, I spotted somebody that I thought could be him because he didn't look at all like Tim. Anyway, after the service, I walked up to this guy and I said to him, excuse me, are you Richard Patrick? And he said, yes. And I said, well, I knew your brother. It was severely emotional. And it was very nice to meet him. But wow, it was hard.
I think that it's important not only to the veterans themselves, but to history, that we remember the fallen and we remember those who served. For the foreigners out here, let me explain something to you about those days. Nobody cared. You would go up for service, you would go to the war, you come back, you were not expected to talk about it. Firstly, because they didn't care. Well, that was my impression. I might be wrong, but that's how I saw it. And secondly, of course, there was secrecy. Whatever this unit did, top secret, didn't exist actually. And most of the heroic deeds were said was done by another party called UNITA. And that meant, of course, that these people could never really find peace. And I think that the association and the Savate evenings and the other programs are essential, not only for the veterans themselves, but also for those who lost somebody. And you can imagine this, your son or your brother or your dad left, going up north. You don't really hear what happened to him. When he comes back in a coffin, you most certainly are not allowed to open that coffin. Now, that's for obvious reasons. You know, war is a gruesome business, and sometimes there's not that much left of a body. So it was done for the best of intentions. So I can see to myself, because I speak to a lot of 3-2 Battalion people on this show, and I thank all of them, and I honor all of them. But there's a great brotherhood, and perhaps we should speak about that. Leon, can you tell me about the brotherhood of 3-2 Battalion? And then I'll ask each of you, Rick, as well as Justin, I'll ask each of you for your opinion on what is the brotherhood of 3-2 Battalion, because I've never seen it anywhere else. It is just fantastic. I think the only place which comes close is Special Forces. But the other units, as I sit here, I don't see the same thing. Perhaps 6-1 MEC as well. And if I'm wrong, please forgive me. I haven't spoken to all of you, but 3-2 Battalion seems to be special. Leon, can you tell me about your brotherhood?
Well, absolutely. It's a bit different than when I was at varsity, you know, the hostel, the residence we stay and Pukka and, you know, the BCom students and what and school. This is very different. The thing is, the amazing thing is you see someone like 40 years later and you're close like this immediately. The friendship just carry on. You're on the same wavelength. It's absolutely amazing. And then what we did, you know, we haven't raised it yet, but at our age now, there's guys passing away, heart attacks and whatever. And then we help the families during the funerals, parades and that. In some cases, there's money needed. And then we said, okay, guys, let's raise some money. Here's the bank account. And all the money went over to the family. Just to get them through this, you know, first few weeks with the bank freezing the bank accounts and all that. And the money just keep on flowing. And the guys open their hearts and their wallets. And whenever someone got a problem, there's someone helping and raising, like Rick. Rick is very good with that. There's a few others as well, but you know, Rick is special. He's from the Eastern Cape region. And we will say, listen, there's a guy in need. We need to visit. The other day, there's one of our members, he pulled really amps, having his business. I don't want to go into too much detail. So there's one guy, Steph, he phoned me and said, we need to go and visit him. And all of a sudden, we said, we concoct this weekend. And we phoned his wife. Steph phoned his wife and said, listen, play along. We want to surprise him. And so his wife and his daughter said, no, Dad, you're going to have a weekend with the girls, and Mum, she's going to sleep over somewhere. So they packed his bags, and he didn't know anything. So when they dropped him off in the northern KZN area near St. Lucia, he get out of the car, and I look at his face, and he was a bit mouthy, you know. And all of a sudden, he looked through the bushes. The guy said, go and watch, I'm the observation post. And then all of a sudden, he saw me. And then he said, Grobby, jou bliksem. Luckily, the overseas guys will not know what I just said. But it's just, when he walked around, you see the guys, mostly old recce group guys from the beginning, the guys who started the recce group. And to watch it from a distance, I wasn't part of the recce group, but I'm the KZN guy. Also, people phoned me and asked me to help. And I saw a lot of emotions. And now it was a ball. And just to see that the brotherhood, the friendships, how people support one another. The guy walked out, his batteries was charged. So it was a huge success. His wife was very, very impressed. And the daughters. And him, mostly. So this is what we do, things like this.
Justin, can you tell us about the Brotherhood of 3-2 Battalion? You have a few words?
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting, because if I need, I need to go back to this whole issue in my mind as to why I volunteered for 3-2 Battalion. At the time, I didn't know about the Brotherhood. I'll explain a bit about that. But it was more, I think, the unconventional nature of the battalion. I'm not a spit and polish sort of guy. Don't tell me what to do. Leave me to make up my own mind. And that's where instinctively I knew 3-2 Battalion was where my destiny lay, and also the clandestine nature of the work intrigued me. And as a youngster looking for adventure, it was the place to go. And when I got there, I very quickly picked up on something. There were two issues. There was this brotherhood issue, this brotherhood that I could feel. And also what struck me was the fact that black and white were working hand in hand together. And that was at the heart of apartheid. And it was amazing to see how dynamic that was, where we were living and working in an environment where it wasn't about the color of the man's skin that counted. It was what he was capable of. So it was amazing. And I believe that was the single biggest reason behind why the unit was so successful. And it was almost unstoppable when you get that right. But and then within that was the brotherhood. And that, while I was there, I felt it intensely, but no one actually verbalized what I've later discovered reading Jan Breitenbach's book, The Tempered Sword, is that when he formed the unit and the remnants of the FNLA army, he brought them back out of the Angolan Civil War in 76, and 3-2 was formed out of that. The problem that he had was how to get these black Portuguese-speaking ex-guerrilla soldiers out of Angola to get their loyalty and commitment to an army battalion within the South African army. Because their loyalty surely wouldn't be to a battalion that was defending apartheid, as it were. And in his book, he comes up with the fact that he borrowed the term from the French Foreign Legion, Legio Patria Nostra, and that's the French Foreign Legion's motto. And basically, it means the Legion is our fatherland. So the allegiance and your loyalty lay to the battalion before anything else. And that was an incredibly powerful thing to see and feel. Interestingly, when I look back, it wasn't anywhere. When I first saw that, I thought he should have put that on in big letters all over the place. And in hindsight, my guess is he didn't do that because there would have been a problem with the higher up guys and the politicians who would have thought otherwise. So yeah, that for me is the bond, is that Legio Patria Nostra, the Legion is our fatherland, and it's the battalion was our fatherland. Our loyalty and pride lay first and foremost in that battalion. And that's what still lives amongst us today.
That's a great story, because I've read in, I think in the Colonel's books, one of them, I might be wrong, where people, when they came back first from Savannah, People refer to them as Brighton dogs. And then they use the K word, which I'm not going to use on the show, or the N word. If you're American, you know what I mean. And certainly that was the way it was. But the unit then turned into itself and it became this fantastic fighting unit. Rick, what do you have to say about the Brotherhood of 3-2 Battalion, which is still alive today?
Of course, I left the unit in 1982 and I never went back until the closure of the base, when the United Nations were, you know, the Blue Berets were all over the show. And Buffalo Base had changed a lot. But I hadn't seen many of my friends from when I clawed out until that day. I can't, Grobbies, wanneer was daai dag? Wanneer was daai tripie wat ons opgevlieg het om Buffalo totsiens te sê?
Was 89.
Was it 89 geweest?
89,
Okay,
yeah.
so 89 was the first time I went back after clearing out, and I hadn't seen any of my pals. You know, the most amazing thing is, when I got to Waterkloof, where we flew from, back to Rundu, and I saw my friends, it was as if I'd seen them yesterday. Like Robbie says, there's a bond. I mean, I hadn't seen Justin for 20 years, man, perhaps before we bumped into each other. And it was the same thing. It was like you haven't been apart, you know. And although you're grayer and balder and fatter, you're still the same guy, and the bond is there, you know. I think, as Justin says, with Colonel Jan's geslagspreek, what's it, motto, you know, the French Foreign Legion one. Our motto was that was on our beret was Prolio Precasi, which in Latin means forged in battle. And I think the reason why we are so close is because we all were forged in battle. We worked together, we played together, and some of us died together, you know. So I think that's probably the reason why there's such a camaraderie between us. And I'm sure it's like that with other units as well. I'm sure it is.
Yeah, if I may, for me, what sets 3-2 Battalion apart from other units is that the best way I can describe this is when I arrived in Rundu, on my way, just arrived, and I walked out of the back of the big Hercules transport with all, I was one of the, what they called the Ruva, the new guys, with our military kit still pretty new, and all the Omana, which is the old men, standing outside, waiting for us to come out the aircraft so they could board and go home, having finished their service. And there were a lot of them standing out there, and a lot of them were very vocal, and that is all good-natured stuff, but sort of shouting and catcalls and chirping us and all the rest of it in good nature. But what struck me was when I was looking around, and off to one side there were about 5 3-2 guys standing there, and same sort of age, you know, 20 years old. But these guys, they just had a completely different aura about them to any of the other SA Army guys. They had sort of faint little smiles on their faces. They could see the humor in all of it, but they weren't joining in and chirping everybody. And when I looked closely at them, they had this this confidence, this pride, which was very much overwritten by this humility. And when I saw that, you know, you could see these guys had been there, they'd done it, even at their young age, months and months in the bush, and interspersed with firefights with the enemy. Yeah, they had a maturity, a dignity, and a humility about themselves, and they were very self-assured. But I'll come back to that word, humble, because they didn't have to shout about anything. They been there, done that, And that epitomizes 3-2 for me to this day, is the self-assuredness, the pride, but overlaid with this humility. And that, again, I think is one of the key things behind 3-2 success, was that sort of level-headed humility and confidence with that. So
something that stood out for me was General Jannie Gelnys. He had a soft spot for 3-2. And whenever he visited the base, he stood there on Buffalo on the parade ground, and his speech was in Portuguese, and the translator translated back to English. And then the troops were absolutely mad when they saw him. They sing, they got into threes, and then they do the parade, they marched past him, and then he got to receive the salute. And then the troops sing the old FNLA songs. And Jannie Gelnys told the guys and said, listen, 3-2 Battalion is the best or the most successful unit in the SADF since World War II. So it's not what we said, it's what he said. And then whenever things get tough in the bush, after Savate, we did another one and another trip, and a whole bunch of guys passed away. And then Falcon called us on the radio one afternoon, and he said, listen, one of the Lutz said, yeah, but you know, how long are we still going to be here? We did 3 opses in a row. That's about what, 6 weeks times 3, 18 weeks. And then he said, you are there to do and to die and not to question why. And everybody sat back. And then I said, that was one of the best lessons I've ever learned. Don't sit back and grumble and bitch. You know, you are there to do a job. And it's back. It make us stronger. The day when we flew out, Colonel Hills, as we get out of the helicopter, everybody got a cold beer after how many weeks in the bush? Actually a month or 2, can't remember. But that is the thing. We appreciate it, and it makes us a bit different. Not better necessarily, but different. You can handle it.
Well, that's true. And I think that flight you all took back to Buffalo was arranged by Buttons Haynes, who was also on this show. Wonderful fellow. But then this thing evolved. At some stage, you people decided you're going to actually go back to Savate. Now, of course, it's not that easy as it sounds. I mean, Savate is in Angola, you're in South Africa. Can one of you, or all of you, please tell me about this? Can I call it a bush trip back to Savate? What happened there? How did you get there? Who fought it out? Who paid for this? Because I believe you would pay for it yourself. It's not that you take the veterans' money to pay for such things. You carry your own costs.
Okay, if I can come in here. 3-2 Battalion had a trust, the 3-2 Battalion Trust. It got nothing to do with the VA. And Gert Nel, he's one of the trustees. And there were certain objectives, strategic objectives by the trust. And one of them was to erect a monument at Savate. And then he said, okay, the trust will pay the monument, and the trust will pay to get the monument there. And then he said, okay, right, who would like to go with? And my big buddy there, Rick, he joined the trip with us in the Overlander. And then we have a more affluent buddy, Justin, got his own plane. He saw me fly over to Runde. So he joined the trip. So we asked Koos Murkroff, the Sergeant Major of the Army, to arrange the trip. Koos, he did this, he's doing this Overlander trips. And he also took 6-1 Mech back to Angola. So he knows the ropes. Now, at that stage, when you have to, at that stage in 2012, if you want to go to Angola, you need to be invited by someone there. and a lot of official stuff. And that was all taken care of by Gert and the committee back then. And they arranged all the paperwork. And the administradore of Savate is actually, you know, something like a mayor. The political head. And then he also signed the documents. So we got the visums. And then he said, okay, guys, you need to pay for yourself. And of course, make the trip very affordable, actually. Very affordable. He bent backwards. And we got together there at rest of, what? Someplace outside Brits. Can't remember the name now. And we drive into Angola with that overlander. We broke 3 records, according to Mkoos Moorkrof. We were the first overlander visiting Angola, the first overlander. Now, the second record we broke, when we drove in, it took us more than a day to get through the border post. And the reason, it was basically to get the monument through, and the paperwork and all that wasn't very in place from the guys who transport the monument. But anyway, for us in the overlander, Rick, 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. Feels like a whole day, 5 hours. Yeah, it's about 5 hours. So we went in. So when we get out in Savate, the administradore was very upset, and also the military general of Kwandu Kobango, he was very upset that it took us so long to take us, you know, to get through the border post. So they actually nailed the border post. So the next, when we drove out, I think it's 15 minutes in and out. 15 minutes. Mkoos said that's the second record, getting through a border post. The third record is that we were the first South African Army unit who erect a monument with approval in Angola. Now we erected, and then after the parade we had to take it down because we still need to get Luanda's final approval. Because if you look at this is the front portion. There's the names of the fallen, of the 32 battalions fallen people that particular day. Now it's square. On the left-hand side, as you look at that needle, the monument is the FAPLA, the badge of FAPLA. In other words, we're also on a FAPLA's fallen. And then if you look at on the right-hand side, from the side, there's the Angolan flag, where we actually commemorate the povo, the civilians of that particular day. So that is basically the monument.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you people crossed the border. You're now at Savate again. What do you feel when you're standing there at Savate and you think all those years ago, this mighty battle which took place, you lost your friends there. You know that the civilians there is from the other side. Did you feel that they might be hostile to you?
Look, the worst thing, if I can come on, I mean, Savate was for me a very bad day in my life. Dwayne said he became a man there. And I mean, most of us, our battle virginities were stripped that day. Not that we didn't have any contacts or whatever. So we had to, myself, I had to get closure on Savate. So as we stopped there, we camped next to the river outside the town, and we saw the civilians, the povos. This is the Angolan name for them, the Portuguese. And we saw the povos, they bath in and they get water from the river, and they wave to us. They wave at us. So the next day, we met the people, went there, and Mkoos said, I've organized a guide that will take you through the base. And we met the people, and it was absolutely amazing when they found out that we were the guys that visited them 32 years before. No hostility, nothing. Huge smiles. The parade that Sunday was amazing. They stood there, and the VA, we form up and we salute with golf shirts, 3-2 golf shirts, and beret and denims. At least some uniformity in the bush. And the civilians were standing there, and also old soldiers, like our guide. He was a lieutenant in the Angolan Army. He fought. He jumped out of that BRDM, Justin, that laid on his back now. And after that, we went with the police to a hookah shop, a shabin, place where you can drink beer. And us 3-2 guys now said, we need to say thanks to the guide and the police. They escorted us through that base. There were still minefields and that, but they know where the minefields was. So, and then the policeman come to me, and then he said, will I mind if he swap his beer for toothpaste? I said, no problem at all. Why don't you want to drink your beer? And the policeman said, but I'm on duty. I can't drink on duty. Now, I bet 99.9% in South Africa, they will not do that. They will hit the beer. And every time, and then second round, it's books for his kids. Third, he went away with a bag, and we actually encouraged one another to buy some more rounds so that he can actually fill his bag. But we were also so thirsty. And then the girl behind the counter, she had this marks on her neck. Yeah. And I asked, what is that? And she said, no, she was also at Savate. She was a 4-year-old kid running across the Shona when FAPLA bombarded the base. That's the Angolans. And the shrapnel hit her, but it was huge marks. And there was no grudges, nothing, none at all. So friendly, absolutely fantastic people.
Yeah, Grobbies, I fully agree with you. There was no animosity. I must admit, just before we went through the border post, I was wondering if I'm doing the right thing going back there. I was not too excited about going back there, until we actually arrived that late afternoon at Savate. And I realized, no, there's no problem here. These people are fine. There's no sweat. And as you said, the next day, then it was really shown to us how these people are. Justin and myself and Peter Lipman, we walked from where we camped right along the river, right up to try and find the stopper group area where we worked and where we had that contact sweeping them towards the river. And we walked just, I don't know how far, but it must have been 3, 4, 5 kilometers up that river. We saw people, they just waved at us. There was no problem. Unfortunately, we never found where the stopper group was because the trees had all grown and, it's impossible to remember where you were. But anyway, we tried. And that trip to Savate was probably one of the highlights of my life. I'm so glad I did it.
What I'm saying, if I can just close my part on this, when I drove out of Savate, same as what Rick said, I buried my demons there, what I heard about Savate. No, Justin?
Yeah, I must say, thinking back, I had very mixed feelings about going back to Savate. I didn't know what to expect, but very thankful that I did go back. I did find a form of closure, especially with good mates Tim and Heinz, after all those years, to be able to do the last salute there for them. But a couple of things, really positive things that I got out of it, and you guys have mentioned it quite a few times, is the the way we were received by the Angolans. There was the one official guy there, and we're standing next to the memorial, and his comment was somewhere along the lines how he felt that the war should never have happened. There was no animosity, and if anything, there was just a huge amount of mutual respect amongst us. But what struck me was his comment that how unnecessary that war was, and the fact that they'd put it behind them and they were getting on with their lives, getting on with rebuilding the country without looking back, without, I won't say regrets, I suppose they do have regrets, but there was nothing holding them back, and they weren't blaming anybody or anything. So from that point of view, it was very encouraging and refreshing. And the other thing that struck me just while we were on parade looking up there was, I just thought back to the battle and realized that FAPLA, our enemy, yes, we defeated them that day. But having said that, they can also be very, very proud of their conduct in that battle. They didn't surrender and they didn't run away. They retreated. As difficult as that was, certainly made by Rick and his bunch up north. Yeah, for that, they deserve huge respect. And also the resistance they put up when the beginning of the battle was just something out of this world. So full respect to them, and very well worthwhile. I intend going back there. But yeah, that was very good to go back. But yeah, in terms of bearing it all and leaving it, I think as long as we are alive, for me, those emotions will still be there. I'll still have to deal with them. It might get a bit easier in a way, but they're always there and pop up at very inopportune moments. And it's a question of learning to deal with it. I think there's a better perspective with it all, maybe a less emotion, but somehow something triggers with what we went through, that triggers an emotion that's very difficult to explain and to understand. But for me, it's as raw today as it was back then, and I don't think that'll ever change.
I have to say, thank you, Justin. I have to say that once again, for the foreigners watching, there were no psychological assistance whatsoever for the troops coming home. And I'm glad to say that on Legacy Partners, we have a 3-2 Battalion fellow, Frans van Staden, who's a psychologist these days, who's assisting as far as he can, wherever he can. But now I need to ask a question to all of you. Is your monument still standing at Savate, or did you have to remove it because of political red tape?
As I indicated, we were allowed to cement the base, but the other portions, the square and the needle, we had to take down, and the base on top of the on the concrete. And the reason for that is for us to have a joint parade with FAPLA. That is our ultimate goal. So we're struggling, and it's my project, and I'm driving it now for the past few years. And we were, just as we get, it's a possibility, and it sounds fantastic. And then some government official said, the Ministry of Defense, the police, everybody. And then there's some other tourism or culture minister, then he's messed the whole thing up. And then just as we were about to tie the knot, the president lost his job. Someone else came in, and then he swooped down, and all the governors of the provinces were changed. So we sit with the new governor. So we have someone there in Angola who's doing a sterling job, Stefan van Wyk, and he lives in Angola. So ultimately, our goal is to sit there doing a joint parade, and the purpose of the parade will be to honor those who lost their lives that day. It's not a Kwitu thing of who won it and who kicked it, but it's not at all. It's not a political thing. It's just old veterans sitting together. So we were also very close in finalize it, and then COVID jump up. We already had all the signatures except the health minister. And the health minister said there's some protocols we can't skip. And, if it wasn't for her or him, we would have been there already, in 2020. So where's the monument currently? It's in the administradore's office. He put it there. So it's in a very, very, very safe place.
So where we are right now is that the monument is right there in Savate, but it's not where it should be in the open. And soon we hope and we trust you will have all the signatures and everything will be fine, and this monument will be raised and probably be a parade between yourself as well as FAPLA. Now, would the idea then be, once this happens, that you have like a yearly, can I call it a pilgrimage to Savate to honor the fallen as well as your unit? Would that be the idea behind it?
Well, it will be very good, but then we need to have people to sponsor, and we would also like to take our soldiers back to Savate. But a few years ago, the cost was around 12,500 rand per person, and there's no way they can afford that. So this is one of the things where we need to generate funds for the 3-2 Battalion VA to actually get people there and do what we're supposed to do and want to do, and looking after the memory and sorting out the graveyard at Buffalo in Namibia. So, but for now, our first aim is to go back to Savate to put it up. And the Angolans was actually the previous political heads. They actually thought about building their own monument there. But I don't think it's such a good idea. I said, look, there's their badge on the monument. One thing, and Savate is a very, very extremely poor town. The people, they don't have a lot of money. But when they're in church, nicely dressed underneath a tree, going full blast. Oh, it's amazing. We need to get more people there.
Well, it's logic to me that if you have your monument there and people start going to it, it's going to create other businesses, coca shops, things around it, little memory plates, whatever, it's just a good thing. But you mentioned something to me which is very important and which I want to stress here, is that the money raised by the association assists everyone, black, white, doesn't matter, whoever is in need, the money is going for that.
Correct. Obviously, the needy stand in line first.
But surely, Leon, if you people can grow this to where we want to grow it, we can look at something like scholarships for the children of our veterans. Yeah.
And then we can also do it via the 3-2 Battalion Property Limited, who's the business arm. It's now a registered company. So that will be the vehicle. But now we need money, people who can open their hearts and their wallets overseas and to help us.
Well, it's for a damn good cause, and I sincerely hope they will do so. And I will put your PayPal link here below. And I ask everybody who's listening here, even if you listen to a year from now, 2 years from now, the need is not going to stop. These soldiers are getting older and older. They're not being taken care of by the system, by the state, as it might be where your country is. And therefore, we need to assist each other. And I will urge you, I will ask you, assist as far as you can, give what you can. It will go for a good cause. The financial side is checked. But I'll give you an example. I was actually with the treasurer, Martin Venter, who's a 3-2 battalion member. We're going to record him as well. I was with him in Nigeria 10 years ago. We worked together. I was like the legal guy. He was in finance. And he said to me that in December, they needed money for the 3-2 battalion house in Pretoria. And they quickly raised, within 48 hours, they raised a bit of money, about 10,000 rands, which is not even $1,000. That is about like $700 perhaps, even less, depending on the, where the rand stands to the dollar. And they used that money to buy food, to make sure that people can not just actually eat. And they still have some of that money left. Not a lot, but some of it left. Now, what that means to me is there's no wastage here. So your money is actually going to be used as it should be used and as you want it to be used. Am I correct if I say that? Rick, you were involved in the administration for a long time.
Yeah, certainly, of course, I believe that that's very prudent, the way the VA runs the finances there. Not 1 cent gets spent on rubbish.
Well, Internet, we're coming to the end of this episode as well. So, Rick, can I ask you for a few final words on the Brotherhood as well as on the association and Savate, by which I include, of course, Savate Day, Savate Weekend?
Yeah, thank you, of course. All of us, I'm sure, would thank you from the bottoms of our heart for giving us this opportunity to tell our side of the story. It really means a lot, and thank you for that. In terms of the Brotherhood of 3-2, well, I've played in rugby teams, I've played in cricket teams, and I've never ever experienced the brotherhood that I have with my brothers, that I call brothers from another mother. It's just a privilege and an honor to have been a member of 32 Battalion and to have worked with everybody that I ever came across. Every single guy that ever walked into the base of 32 Battalion, I regard as my brother, no matter if he was a cook or if he was a mechanic or if he was a driver or if he was anything. They all did a very important job, and I regard them seriously as brothers. As I say, I couldn't be more honored and privileged to have had the opportunity of working with these people. And thank you very much for your input and your efforts with us as well, of course. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the honor lies with you guys, not with me. But I'll tell you this channel exists here to help and to assist. And that's what we do. Justin, how do you feel about last words, Brotherhood, 3-2 Battalion Association, and the Savate days?
Yeah, I think if I could just wrap my side of it up by, if I could quote what I've written at the end of my book, and it's a quote I've taken from the end of the movie Platoon, and every Savate day I read it, not that I need to read it to be reminded, but yeah, quite simply, the war is over for me now, but it will always be there for the rest of my days. But be that as it may, those of us who did make it have an obligation to build again, to teach to others what we know, and to try with what's left of our lives to find a goodness and a meaning to this life. And that was Charlie Sheen, acting as, ironically, his name in the movie was Taylor, in the movie Platoon, when he was Casavacked out at the end of the movie. And that pretty much sums up where I'm at with us all. So, yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Leon, do you have a few final words for us? Same subject?
Yes, I just want to say very categorically, this is my own opinion, and all the other guys that went with me in the bush, none of us ever went there to fight for apartheid. We were soldiers, we were doing what we were supposed to do, and we worked very strong, very strict according to the Geneva Convention. Nothing funny ever happened. We're definitely not a bunch of racists. Quite the opposite. We work with our troops. Going into the bush, you know, they say, the Indians say, if you want to know someone, you need to walk among their moccasins. We did more than that, a lot more. My last thing is just, when I was still at varsity, you do a camp, you're in the bush, and then a week later, you're back in varsity. You sit there in your 10 classrooms, and you are still full of bush, and maybe some black is beautiful camouflage cream. And every single time going back was some sort of a hassle to adjust, because it was so different where we came from and what we are doing then at varsity, being students. But we pulled through, getting fat and losing hair, as Rick stated.
I think if this was any other country, if this didn't happen in South Africa, in the South African Army Defence Force, there would have been a major movie made about the Battle of Savate. And there would have been movies about the men who moved on and became quite successful in their own right, in their own spheres. But yet, the situation is as it is now. We have to live with that. And thus we have a Veterans Association who is trying to assist wherever it can. So once again, I'm asking all of you here, assist, come to the party, come and help. We would be most grateful to you. And until we meet again, God bless.